Last night, we got kicked off with the Boston Celtics trading Jrue Holiday, not acquiring, trading Jrue Holiday for Anthony Simons and 2 second-round picks. Let's just start with this, right? This is obviously in part due to the Boston Celtics need to reduce salary. Throughout the year, and throughout I think Boston was one of the first offseason previews that we did. We noted that we felt like this is probably the last hurrah for the Celtics team. Even if, Jason Tatum does not get injured, I feel like they probably would have tried to cut some costs here and there at the end of the day because they were getting to be wildly expensive. In Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, another deal that we'll talk about that happened earlier, are the easiest ways to cut those costs. You know what I mean? It just feels like the easiest ways to get off of that money. Now, when we did the offseason preview, we thought that the Celtics probably would have to attach something small to get off of Jrue Holiday. We didn't think it'd be anything crazy. We thought that they would just have to give up something tiny in order to do this. They actually got stuff back for Jrue Holiday, which is a huge win. And I want to start here. I'm not as low on this deal for Portland as I think some people are. I just want to say that up front. This is a huge win for Boston to me. It's a massive win given their situation with Jason Tatum being out for next season, to be able to get off of the Jrue Holiday money without having to give up any additional capital, and also getting a player that is, I think, genuinely going to have some value on the trade market himself because he's an expiring contract now moving forward. What was your immediate reaction when you saw this deal from the Boston Celtics last night?
So from the Celtics perspective, and it'll inform the rest of our conversation, I think it's more so that this is the first move that they're going to make, that there's clearly another one coming. How many more moves come? I think that it's fascinating that they get a very clear rotation player in Simons that you can plug right in to the 2 guard spot or the point guard spot next to Derek White. You get a year to see what you have in him. So it gave me the indication that if they are going to do more, and we'll talk about the Porzingis deal, that might be it. So you can stay somewhat competitive while not in contender status for the Eastern Conference. To your point about the Portland side of things, which I guess we'll eventually get to. I'm not as down on the Portland side either, but obviously coming from the Knicks world, I have to add the Knicks perspective on this, and just more so the Eastern Conference perspective. This is the official announcement, the beginning of the official announcement that the run's over. Like, if the Tatum injury wasn't like the first indication, this is now we're going to try to get as close to under the cap as possible. We're going to avoid, or that apron as possible. We're going to do our best to take a year, get younger. And, Jrue Holiday, a champion and an important piece to an important team in Boston. But this is the official ending of their run, which happened on Monday night.
So I don't disagree with that. I think it's the ending of this iteration of their run, right? I don't know that it's the ending of the run entirely. I think it's the ending of what this run looks like for them, right? We'll talk about their full salary cap sheet momentarily here, whenever we get through the Kristaps Porzingis piece of this as well. But I think that what is so impressive about this for Boston is the fact that they have found a way to get value for both of these guys in some respect, right? Maybe Porzingis, they didn't get as much value, but he's a guy that doesn't have as much, value as Jrue Holiday theoretically, regardless, right? Because of the injury history. But to be able to pull this off in the way that they have really is remarkable. And maybe we do actually just need to talk about these deals in conjunction with one another, because I'm actually struggling to do so without being able to talk about that. So the other deal that Boston pulled off is Kristaps Porzingis getting moved to Atlanta with a second round pick, Boston getting George Niang in a second round pick, and Brooklyn getting Terrence Mann and the number 22 pick from Atlanta. So Atlanta basically traded George Niang, Terrence Mann, and the number 22 overall pick to or for Kristaps Porzingis in a second rounder, right? That is a deal that is interesting to me that they gave up that much value for Kristaps. Frankly, I wonder how much of that had to do with the fact that Terrence Mann maybe was seen as a negative contract league wide. But more than that, Boston has now immediately shed. I want to say that the number is, I mean, just looking through it, Niang and Simons were at 35.8. Jrue and Porzingis combined were at 63.1. So that's like 26 million off of their books. Right now, for the 12 players that are projected to be on the Boston Celtics roster, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Anthony Simons, George Niang, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, Baylor Shireman, Xavier Tillman, Nimi Keita, JD Davison, Jordan Walsh. They are only at 200.7 million right now. And Bobby Marks is correct on this number. They saved $180 million in the luxury tax today.
Yeah.
That is an insane amount of money to have saved. And the thing is that, like, if they really wanted to get below the tax now, and if I was them, I think I would want to get below the tax, and we'll talk about why momentarily here. I think they can pretty easily do it. Does this make Boston a worse team? Yes, absolutely. Unequivocally, it makes them a worse team. But they now have an immense amount of flexibility in a way that they did not have yesterday. Like, not even remotely close on their cap sheet. The second apron is 207.8 million, and they're going to add, I don't know, like $2 to $2.5 million with the number, what is that? The number 28 overall pick. They're going to add probably about $1 million to $1.5 million with the number 32 overall pick if they keep both of those picks. But they're already at like then 204 basically for an entire roster. It's pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good. For reference, the second apron is 207.825. The first apron is 195.94. And then the tax is, what is the tax? What is the tax? We don't have the actual tax threshold yet. I want to say it's going to come in around like 189 or so. That's what the current projection is. So like they can cut 11 million here pretty easily, I think, with the Anthony Simons deal if they want to. This is fantastic financial maneuvering from Boston. Yes, they're a worse team, but they're not going to be great next year anyway because Tatum isn't there. I think this makes them like pretty drastically better positioned moving forward to be able to rebuild for the 2026-27 season, the 2027-28 seasons, which are the ones that ultimately they care about, because Kristaps Porzingis not getting any younger, I believe turns 30 or 31 this year. Jrue Holiday obviously not getting younger, right? I think that you should have expected some drop off by the time 2026-27 would have ended up happening. This is just a home run. Like this sets them up to be able to get flexible again around Jason, Jaylen, and Derek White.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, to clarify, when I say the end of their run, it's literally the iteration of the unstoppable thing that I thought they built last year, the year before that had the insane net rating and won 60 games this past season. I think the fact that I liken it a little bit to the Warriors after losing KD, after losing Klay Thompson, they had that down year. I know Steph got hurt that year too, but they looked at it as an opportunity to reset everything. And they took a flyer on D'Angelo Russell, eventually turning him into Wiggins. And they were able to reset everything, not in the same way the Celtics just did. Like, obviously, I think the Celtics are very well run and that they're well coached, and how highly I think of Tatum and Brown and how much I feared them going into a series against the Knicks this year. they'll be heard from again. It's like you said, it's a retooling, it's a resetting, and they've now set themselves up perfectly when Jason Tatum comes back, which is why to the place I was interested in going when I first heard about the Holiday trade and what comes next. I don't know how you feel about this, Sam. I don't think now a Derek White trade's coming. I don't think now a Jaylen Brown trade's coming. Now you've actually set yourself up that this season, if it's a 6 seed or you're in the play-in, whatever, it's about like we're set up perfectly for 26-27. And, hopefully, obviously not for me, but if you're a Celtics fan, hopefully, you trust your front office to make those right moves with this flexibility that they've added.
Yeah, and I-95 Bully, shout out to you.
What up, I-95?
The super chat. Tapping in late, was the Boston trade for salary purposes or are they retooling? I think they go hand in hand at the end of the day. Because here's the thing, like the question about this will be, why do we give a fuck what is going into Wyc Grousbeck in the new ownership group's pockets, right? Like, why do we care? The reality is that this, old ownership group and the new ownership group is just not going to spend $600 million on a roster into perpetuity. Like the level to which you have to win games in the playoffs and continue to get like added playoff revenue in order to even like hit a break even point. Like you basically have to make the finals. Otherwise you just have no chance to break even at that salary point. And I think the Celtics, like, I would imagine, frankly, they probably lost money this year would be my guess. Like I haven't looked at their finances. I haven't, done a ton of due diligence and research into that. I would guess that given the fact that they lost early in the playoffs, they lost money this year, given their current financial situation.
And 6 home games, they only had 6 home games this year after years of multiple rounds going into the playoffs.
That's right. So the reality is that you have to cut money in order to make this like a viable operation. And you can say like, oh, well, the ownership group should be lucky to own the Celtics. The number continues to go up for franchise valuations every single time. But like liquid cash is also important in these situations. Like you do need to have money to be able to spend the money. Like it's like being like house rich, right? You can be house rich and asset poor at the end of the day. And it's not like you can spend a crazy amount of money. You just have to move the house, right? I would imagine the Celtics owners don't want to move the house, even though they just did, right? The new owners probably don't want to move the house, right? So it's all about cash flow more than anything. And if you want to have a good sustaining organization here moving forward with Boston, like they're going to be able to be in the tax. They're going to be able to be a very, a team that pays a lot. If I was them, I would probably try to reset the tax this year and get out of the repeater tax.
So is that a Simons move, you think?
I think that the Simons move, as much as anything, has set them up to be able to do that. And I'll explain why in a second. But the key here is flexibility. Like you do need to get flexible in these moments where injury happens. You just have to at the end of the day. Because if you don't, it's just not going to set you up for success long-term organizationally, because owners aren't going to keep losing money in terms of cash flow year after year after year. So as much as we think like it sucks and these teams should all spend $600 million, I would love for all these players to make, $300 million a year or whatever, and hopefully reinvest it in the communities somewhat too. But like, I'm all for players making as much money as possible, but you do have to get realistic about this thing. And I like that Boston got realistic here.
To your point about the realism, this is also accepting the reality that Jason Tatum's injury created. And if you're nostalgic about what Jrue Holiday and Porzingis and what this team eventually meant, this is responsible front office maneuvering and recognizing the opportunity that has presented itself. So whether they want to stay just below the second apron and be a first apron team, they can. Or to your point, if they want to get under that first apron and completely reset everything, they can. This is now created more options than I mean, to be honest, I mean, you talked about this. I talked about this during the Celtics series with my buddy Jack Simone of How About Them Celtics and Hardwood Houdini, excuse me. Like, this was probably coming anyway for the Celtics, even if Jason Tatum didn't get hurt. There was so much about what was on the books and how expensive this team was going to get, even if they make a run to the finals and win it, that it felt somewhat like a last dance feel to all of them. So this was probably always coming. The Tatum injury now makes the situation even more defendable and explained away to your fan base. And it'll be curious to see what they do with this new opportunity.
So that's the big picture for the Celtics, right? Let's talk about just like, the player here, right? And Anthony Simons. Anthony Simons is like a 20-point per game scorer as a 3-point gunning guard, right? That's what he does well. He is an absolute sniper from 3. When he gets hot, he is one of the best shooters on planet Earth. There are moments where he goes through cold stretches for sure and can struggle. I would be surprised if the Celtics saw him as a long-term piece here. I think that they probably looked at this as if it was, okay, we have like kind of a get out of jail free card to get off of this 3-year Jrue Holiday deal for his age 35, 36, 37 seasons. Simons is on an expiring contract. This is going to be way easier for us to trade than the Jrue Holiday deal. And we're getting assets back. This is an easy contract for us to like. This is an easy deal for us to accept, right? Maybe they go into the year with Simons. Maybe they make another move with Simons. Like, the thing that this does though, is it makes it easier for them to be able to like, chip away at this, right? Like my favorite idea for Boston here basically is, could you do something like PJ Washington and I don't know, Jaden Hardy or something for Anthony Simons, because the Mavericks need a starting point guard, right? I think PJ Washington's just like more of a, Boston-y player, tough, switchable. PJ Washington is not stuck behind Cooper Flagg, Anthony Davis, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, but he's not as valuable, I would argue, now in Dallas as he would be elsewhere. Maybe you have to give up a first rounder for, maybe you have to give up 32 or something, 28 to get PJ Washington or something like that, if that's a player you really want. But that deal saves you $6 million again, gets you a semi-interesting player, I guess, in Jaden Hardy, who can score at the very least for sure. But they have Brandon Williams as another smaller guard that they can go. And then, Dallas has a scoring guard to be able to have for this year while Kyrie gets healthy again. So I think that like that's a deal that could make sense. But there are myriad other deals for teams that need scoring guards, right? Anthony Simons is on a 1-year contract. Somebody's going to get hurt in season and be like, shit, we need a scoring guard. It always happens, right? I'm not a big Simons guy. I think he's awful on defense. I think that, he needs to continue to work on being able to pass and make plays for his teammates consistently, but he can really score the ball, and like putting the ball in the bucket is a valuable player at the end of the day. Is he worth $27 million? Not to me, but he is somebody that at the very least, I think will have value on a 1-year deal.
I again look at it from the Knicks perspective of, if they were to keep Anthony Simons, that's a target that a potential Jalen Brunson could go after when they're playing the Celtics. Look, to your point about, could they keep him, and to use the example again, use him like the Warriors used D'Angelo Russell and just take a flyer on it. They eventually waited 2 deadlines, I believe, before making the trade for Andrew Wiggins.
One. It was the
immediate one before the pandemic. So then it was that same year that they made the trade and just kind of turn the paperclip into something else. Like, this is an asset that they can take a look at if they wanted to go in season with him. I like that thought of him going to Dallas. I don't know if Mr. Defense wins championships, is going to want to trade for Anthony Simons, though. So I think they would go a different direction. But you know, they listen. They may also be looking for a new head coach soon. So the Dallas also has other questions to be answered. But it's to your point. There are many other teams that could potentially play ball with the Celtics if they wanted to just reroute him to someplace else to get under the tax.
I think that's definitely right. And there's just like so much space to be able to do that. Right. So yeah, you can like piecemeal this if they wanted to. Like, could you even do something with the Lakers where it's like, okay, we'll take back like Maxi Kleba and, Gabe Vincent or something that gets you to what, 23 million or so. And we will do, I think that the Lakers are over the first apron, so they can only take back 100%. That actually gets hard with the Lakers. It has to be a team that's not over the first apron. But regardless, like there are deals out there where I think you can piecemeal like deals together. And then if the Celtics just wanted to toss a deal into like a trade exception somewhere to get like all the way under the tax, they'd be able to do that, I think, very easily. I think that that's probably more what the Celtics are looking at this as opposed to like the player Anthony Simons, basically.
Yeah.